Tyrone Bowman live. Welcome to the program on tonight. Welcome to the conversation. Uh, Global news from around the world. I'm going to begin picking up where I left off an hour ago. I'm talking about, according to BBC News, a very noteworthy news story about Instagram and YouTube owners built addiction machines, and a trial is underway regarding this right now. It is ironic that individuals are suing Facebook, Meta, YouTube, and Instagram when oftentimes when individuals use these platforms, sometimes they just don't have safeguards in mind. Well, anyway, let's get down to this article written by Lily Jamali from the North American Technology. She's a North American technology correspondent. So according to BBC News, the world's social media companies have been accused of creating addiction machines as landmark trial began in California examining the mental health effects of Instagram and YouTube. In his opening argument before Los Angeles Superior Court Judge Carolyn B. Call and a jury, Mark Lanier argued that his client plaintiff, KGM, quote unquote, suffered from mental health issues as a result of her social media addiction. These companies built machines designed to addict the brains of children, and they did it on purpose, Lanier said. This afternoon, lawyers for Meta and YouTube are expected to argue that KGM's addiction stemmed from other issues in her life, not their negligence. KGM will be referenced by her initials or as Kaylee GM because the alleged harms took place when she was a minor. Also charged that Meta and YouTube failed to warn of the dangers to young users posted by the design of their platforms. Lanier underscored his opening remarks by speaking with a display of children's blocks in front of him. The words, quote, addicting, end quote, brains and children appeared next to the letters A, B, and C. This case is about two of the richest corporations in history who have engineered addiction in children's brains, Lanier said. I'm going to show you the addiction machine that they built, the internal documents that people normally don't get to see, and emails from Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg and YouTube executives. In a selected portion of a 2015 email, Lanier showed the court, Zuckerberg demanded that time spent increases by 12% on Meta platforms in order to meet internal business goals. As for YouTube, Lanier said the platform owned by Google intentionally targeted young users because it couldn't charge advertisers more as compared to its YouTube Kids platform. The claimant's lawyer accused YouTube of trying to take advantage of busy parents looking for a digital babysitting service, quote unquote. The proceedings on Monday marked the first day in what is poised to be a 6-week trial with significant implications for similar lawsuits around the country likely to go to trial this year. The Los Angeles trial will test legal arguments set forth by families claiming to have seen their children suffer due to their use of social media and the platforms with reject liability for how their platforms are used by people. Over the course of several weeks, there will be testimony from experts, family members of children who died, and by Zuckerberg, Adam Mosseri, the head of Instagram, and Neil Mohan, the CEO of YouTube. These are names you don't normally hear, but these are the people and the brains behind the operation of these social media platforms. Jurors are also expected to hear from former Meta employees who quit and became whistleblowers regarding the issue of social media addiction among children. The outcome of the trial may provide a benchmark for monetary damages that would likely impact thousands of cases brought by other plaintiffs, their families, state prosecutors, and school districts across the United States. Monday's proceedings took place as about 100 people watched from the gallery, including parents who believe their children died as a result of choices the companies made about how to design their algorithms, notifications, and other features. In their forthcoming opening statements, the tech companies are expected to argue that KGM's mental health harms were caused by factors unrelated to their platforms, such as challenges she suffered during her childhood. The companies also maintain they are not responsible for content that third parties post under federal law. Snapchat parent Snap and TikTok both settled with KGM last month and are no longer defendants in the case. You know what? I think they're going to end up settling because this appears to be a pretty good case, and I'll tell you the reason why. These people deliberately advertise things on these platforms, and they allow content on their platforms that will deliberately keep people engaged for long, extended periods of time. And that's one reason why the feasibility factor that may play out. This is, of course, the Associated Press News.com. The Democrats and White House trade offers as shutdown of Homeland Security looms. This article was written by Mary Claire Jalonik and Kevin Freakin and Seung Ming Kim. Democrats have begun tentative talks with the White House on their demands for dramatic new restrictions on President Donald Trump's immigration crackdown. Trading offers just days before funding for the Department of Homeland Security is about to expire. Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer said Monday that Democrats had sent the White House their list of demands for immigration and customs enforcement and other federal law enforcement agencies. The White House said it had responded with a counterproposal. No details were immediately available. Time is running short with another partial government shutdown threatening to begin Saturday. Among the Democrats' demands are a requirement for judicial warrants, better identification of DHS officers, new use of force standards, and a stop to racial profiling. They say such changes are necessary after 2 protesters were fatally shot by federal agents and killed in Minneapolis last month. Republicans, the clock is ticking, Schumer said on the Senate floor. We have sent you our proposals and they are exceedingly reasonable. You know, there is a program on Netflix right now called LBJ. Check it out. I just started watching it. And then you will understand and see how politics is really played. And the manipulative mind games that go on behind the scenes, the jockeying, the buying, the persuading, the lobbying, the lies, the deliberative misleading of the public. Check it out. It's the lead actor is Woody Harrelson. Remember him from Cheers? That's when he first got his start. Check out LBJ on Netflix. You don't want to miss this particular movie. So there were some small signs of progress. Senate Majority Leader John Thune said Monday there had been a good back and forth between the sides on substantive issues. Republicans would send a counterproposal soon. Still, it was unclear if the two sides could find agreement on the charge issue of immigration enforcement. And as rank-and-file leaders in both parties were skeptical about finding common ground. Many Republicans have balked at the Democrats' requests, and some have demands of their own, including the addiction of legislation that will require proof of citizenship before Americans register to vote, and restrictions on cities that they say do not do enough to crack down on illegal immigration. Talking about Democratic cities. Let me ask this question. How would these same lawmakers feel if these ICE people were in their cities doing this to their families, their friends, their relatives, and their associates? I bet you they would change the laws then. They would have a difference of opinion then. They would quickly start raising hell all throughout the country. Some people don't feel suffering happening directly to them. They'll tell people, shut up and suffer in silence. But when the same thing starts happening to them, they start hollering, OMG. They want a remedy. They want a situation. So Congress is trying to renegotiate the DHS spending bill after President Donald Trump agreed to a Democratic request that it be separated out from a larger spending measure that became law last week. That package extended Homeland Security funding at current levels only through February 13, creating a brief window for action as the two parties discuss new restrictions on ICE and other federal officers. The funding issue came to a head after ICU nurse Alex Preddy was shot and killed by a U.S. Border Patrol officer in Minneapolis on January 24. This is the same Alex Preddy they tried to demonize. They lambasted him. They verbally castrated him. They verbally came to the conclusion that he was attempting to kill an ICE agent. Less than 14% of those arrested by ICE in Trump's first year are back in office. Had violent criminal records, according to documents. This was written by Camilo Montoya Galvez for CBS News. Less than 14% of nearly 400,000 immigrants arrested by Immigration and Customs Enforcement in President Trump's first year back in the White House had charges or convictions for violent criminal offenses. Convictions for violent criminal offenses, according to an internal document of Homeland Security document obtained by CBS News. The official statistics contained in the DHS document, which had not been previously reported publicly, provide the most detailed look yet into who ICE has arrested during the Trump administration's far-reaching deportation operations across the U.S. The internal DHS figures undermine frequent assertions by the Trump administration that its crackdown on illegal immigration is primarily targeting dangerous and violent criminals living in the U.S. illegally. People Mr. Trump and his lieutenants have regularly called the worst of the worst. The statistics show ICE has dramatically increased arrests since Mr. Trump's return to office. Nearly 60% of ICE arrests over the past year had criminal charges or convictions, the document indicates. But among that population, the majority of the criminal charges or convictions are not for violent crimes. For example, while Mr. Trump and his aides often talk about immigration officials targeting murderers, rapists, and gangsters, the internal data indicate that less than 2% of those arrested by ICE over the past year had homicide or sexual assault charges or convictions. Another 2% of those taken into ICE custody were accused of being gang members. Nearly 40% of all those arrested by ICE in Mr. Trump's first year back in office did not have any criminal record at all, and were only accused of civil immigration offenses such as living in the U.S. illegally or overstaying their permission to be in the country. The DHS document shows those alleged violations of U.S. immigration law are typically adjudicated by Justice Department immigration judges in civil, not criminal proceedings. While Mr. Trump's deportation program enjoyed majority support during the 2024 presidential campaign, in his early months in office, opposition to his crackdown has grown significantly because of concerns about agents' tactics in cities like Minneapolis and over who is being swept up by their operations. A CBS News poll last month found that Americans' support for Mr. Trump's deportation efforts had fallen to 46%. Down from 59% at the start of the second term. Just over 60% of those said immigration agents were being too tough. Trying to get you as much news as possible before I conclude on tonight. Now I want to go to Canada. According to Reuters, Air Canada suspends Cuba flights as islands set to run out of jet fuel. So here's the summary. Jet fuel shortage linked to U.S. blocking Venezuelan oil imports. Some airlines plan to refuel in nearby countries. Air Canada has set to fly about 33,000 customers home. Cuba historically relies on Venezuela for jet fuel. Air Canada said on Monday it is suspending flights to Cuba, which warned it was running out of jet fuel as the U.S. tightens its grip on the communist-run nation's oil supply by blocking shipments from Venezuela. Canada's largest carrier said in a statement that aviation fuel is not projected to be commercially available at airports as of Tuesday, as governments issue notices warning that the supply is likely to be unreliable. The shortfall is set to last from February 10 through March 11, according to a notice to pilots published late on Sunday. It comes just 2 days after Cuba officials said air travel would not initially be impacted by fuel rationing plan announced on Friday. The Cuban Aviation Corporation published a short statement on Monday morning, just hours after the notice to pilots was issued, but made no mention of the fuel shortage or flight cancellations. We continue working tirelessly to ensure the safety, fluidity, and order of the airspace, supporting airline operations and ensuring that aviation in Cuba maintains the levels of reliability that characterize us. All right, let me go to this news source real quick and see what it's talking about before we conclude. Just added. Al Jazeera News. All right. This is from Al Jazeera. The article says, and this was written by Elise Javori. Israel's Gaza genocide risks global order. Leaders warn at the Jazeera Forum. So Israel's war on Gaza and actions beyond are reshaping global politics and threatening global stability from here. And Israel's genocide against Palestinians in Gaza and its geopolitical fallout reverberating across the Middle East and beyond have dominated the 17th Al Jazeera Forum in Doha. Senior political figures and officials warned on Saturday that the conflict is accelerating the collapse of international norms, reshaping regional power balances, but also noted it has pushed the Palestinian case back to the center of global diplomacy. Iranian Minister of Foreign Affairs Abbas Araghchi, fresh from indirect talks in Oman with the United States, described the Palestinian issue as the central strategic question shaping the future of the Middle East, warning that Israel's military campaign in Gaza and regional posture are undermining the global legal order. He said the Palestinian struggle is a defining question of justice in West Asia and beyond, and the strategic and moral compass of our region. Condemning the war, Archie stated, "What we are witnessing in Gaza is not merely a war, it is the deliberate destruction of civilian life on a massive scale. It is genocide. Genocide. He added that the violence has wounded the conscience of humanity and exposed the inability of global powers to prevent attacks on civilians." Also, this is from the Jerusalem Post concerning the Middle East. This article was written by Danielle Grayman Kennard. In the quote, in the context that our people are still under occupation, talking about this disarmament is an attempt to make our people an easy victim to be eliminated. Hamas's political leader, Mas Sha'al, said, Hamas will not disarm because that would make Palestinian an easy victim to be eliminated. Hamas's internal political leader, Khalid Mash'al, who lives in Qatar, said Sunday. In the context that our people are still under occupation, I just read that. As part of the second phase of the U.S. brokered ceasefire agreement, the Gaza Strip is to be demilitarized. Hamas is supposed to hand over control of Gaza to an agreed upon National Committee for the Administration of Gaza. Critics have expressed doubts that Hamas will give up power. Quote, "It is necessary to provide an environment that allows reconstruction and relief and ensure that the war does not reignite between Gaza and the Zionist entity," Mash'Allah said. This is a logical approach, and Hamas, through mediators Qatar, Turkey, and Egypt, and through indirect dialogues with the Americans versus the mediators, has reached out, or there has been an understanding of Hamas's vision on that. Yes, this is something that requires great effort, not an approach of disarmament. There's a lot going on. Wow. Even Al Jazeera News is reporting on the case I just talked about. You know, landmark cases on social media's impact on children began this week in the U.S. This is coming from Al Jazeera News. So this is making national news. One case in California focuses on addiction, while another in New Mexico targets access to explicit material. Two lawsuits accusing the world's largest social media companies of harming children begin this week, marking the first legal efforts to hold companies like Meta responsible for the effects that products have on young users. Opening arguments began today in a case brought by New Mexico's Attorney General's office, which alleges that Meta failed to protect children from sexually explicit material. A separate case in Los Angeles, which accuses Meta and the Google-owned YouTube of deliberately designing their platforms to be addictive for children, is set to begin later this week. TikTok and Snap were also named in the original California lawsuit, but later settled under disclosed terms. So the New Mexico and California lawsuits are the first of a wave of 40 lawsuits filed by state attorneys general around the U.S. against Meta, specifically that allege that the social media giant is harming the mental health of young Americans. You know what? There's something to this. It is. There's really something to this story because a lot of parents right now are having so many problems with their children and social media. They are addicted to social media. They're addicted to playing the games. They're addicted to so many different things. And that is harming a lot of the stability in households. They can't even get things done with their families because they're always doing this night and day. They sit right in front of the TV. And that's all they want to do. You talk to them like, yeah, okay, whatever. Did you do this? You're bothering me, go away. They ignore everything that's being said. So there may be a strong lawsuit. On tomorrow's report, I'm going to be talking about a lot of sports. I'm going to let you know from the Bleacher Report. I don't have time to get into it tonight, but I will discuss things about Charles the BD Acko. I'll talk about the Clippers, Frank talks with the NBA, the Dallas Investment Group. I'll talk about them. USA versus Canada Women's Olympic Hockey. That'll be on the docket. Seahawks, Jack Boo Boo talks playing after the Super Bowl regarding this upcoming hand surgery and the stitches. So there's so much going on in the world and around the world and throughout the United States of America. And these are things that have to be talked about. Some of the things I have to talk about like this. I'm going to conclude this way. Trump threatens to bar the new U.S.-Canada bridge from opening, demands talks with Ottawa. This is from the Reuters news agency. The summary: Trump demands compensation and respect from Canada. Gordie Howe Bridge, funded by Canada, is nearly completed, and the bridge to ease truck traffic would save $2.3 billion over 30 years. So I'll talk about that on tomorrow. That's just a summary. That's the headline. All right, ladies and gentlemen, my time has come. I have to get ready to leave for today. Hopefully, I'll be back on tomorrow with many more stories. Until then, thank you all for watching. Thank you all for subscribing to the channel. Wish the world was not so advanced. Wow. Somebody says, I loved it. Oh, I loved it in Better Call Saul. All right. I'm trying to read some comments before I leave. Make sure your notification is on. Check it. Make sure that bell was hit twice. Okay? But I got to go, y'all. I got a lot of stuff to do before I get out of here tonight. All right. Thank you all for watching. If you haven't subscribed to Tyrone Bowman Live, kindly subscribe. We're almost at 3,000 subscribers. It's only because of you that I'm still here, that we're still going and going strong. Until then, never surrender, never quit.